We have some breaking news. The Toronto Maple Leafs have just made an absolutely shocking move as following what has been already quite eventful day surrounding Scott Laughton being out with an injury. We have some news that has fans pretty puzzled following that injury. Things just took a very confusing turn. We're going to break down exactly what the move is and discuss why the move now is more shocking than ever. We also have a few other updates on this episode, ladies and gentlemen, but before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Darius, this is an interesting one, and I mean, this came out of nowhere, not necessarily because of the fact that me or you didn't really expect the move, but more so because of the timing of the move. You can see this here. David Kampf has been placed on waivers. Now, if you would have told me this, or if this would have happened yesterday, I would have been like, okay, I guess they couldn't find a trade for him. Even then, $2.4 million hit, all these different things. Darius, with Scott Laughton being out week to week, there was articles being posted even after this dropped and minutes before it dropped about how David Kampf is the perfect fit on that fourth line. Scott Laughton spoke out today about how David Kampf's a reliable fourth line center. He's going to replace what Scott Laughton does, all these different things. He's now gone. And I'm not saying the move to put him on waivers was the one that came out of nowhere. It was the timing of it, especially after Scott Laughton being down for the foreseeable future here with an injury. I'm a little bit, not puzzled by the move, but surprised it came out, especially with everyone talking today. The whole practice theme was David Kampf's in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it's interesting this morning with the injury news to Scott Laughton. He's gone week to week. We don't know exactly what that is. It could be 2 weeks. It could be 3 weeks. It could be 1 week. We don't know exactly how long he's going to be out, but he's out with an injury and he's going to miss the home opener. And obviously we get this news that, David Kampf is now playing or practicing in a regular sweater. He's not an extra sweater. Okay. You're just going to slot him in. That's the presumable fourth line at this point. It is Cowan. It is Lorentz. It is David Kampf. No, 2 hours later, he's now on waivers. And if you look at the whole situation, if you look at the extras, Nick Robertson makes $1.8 million, excuse me. And Calle Jarnkrok makes, $2.1 million. David Kampf makes $2.4 million. So with the process of elimination, if you're going to send somebody down through waivers, you're going to be saving more if you send David Kampf down. If you look at the entire landscape of the team, David Kampf is the one that fits in the least to me at this point when you're looking at the extras and who's actually on the roster, who could make the team, all of these things. But now I'm a little unsure about what the plan is here. Who's going to play fourth line center? Because it was Scott Laughton. In theory, you could have David Kampf play there. You're not going to have Calle Jarnkrok play center now. You're not going to have Nick Robertson play center. So who's playing fourth line center all of a sudden? I think that's pretty interesting. Although one of those guys could probably fill in, but not as effectively as the two other guys, right? So it's a very interesting move. The timing is very odd. They were just practicing with him in that spot. He was no longer considered an extra, and now he's placed through waivers, and you're saving on his contract. If he does go through waivers and you bury him if nobody claims him, which is still up in the air. Nobody wanted to trade for him in the offseason either, right? So that's very much still in the air. You are saving $1.25 million if he is with the Marlies. So you're saving significant cap. If he does end up getting claimed, I think that could be very interesting as well. I don't think he ends up getting claimed. I think he's going to end up going to the Marlies. I think the other two guys, and Robertson and Calle Jarnkrok, have more value than David Kampf, but very interesting timing, very interesting move. And I think it really messes a lot up. There's serious implications on the lineup now heading into opening night in just a matter of hours all of a sudden.
Yeah, and you look at his stats last year, very bad offensively, pretty solid defensively, didn't have a great year. And as you look at, and I had these lines up, what would make sense now? I guess their thought process, at least from what, I'm sure we'll hear more over the next couple of days. We still don't really have a ton of information even on Scott Laughton's injury, just that Darren Dreger tweeted that it was from the game yesterday. For that fourth line, I guess what makes the most sense to me now would be, Jarnkrok on the left, Lorentz in the middle, and then Cowan on the right. Now, maybe they thought, you look at the line here, that Lorentz, Kampf, and Cowan isn't super conducive to Cowan's development because having David Kampf, a really bad offensive center next to Cowan, maybe they don't like that idea. And Jarnkrok, I think, despite his struggles last year, coming off a big injury, I think sports hernia, whatever it was, he is now in a much better spot to, I think, help Easton Cowan develop than a guy like David Kampf would be. And I think having Lorentz there in the middle, Jarnkrok on the left, and Cowan on the right, I think that's the way they're going to go now. And I think that does make more sense than having Kampf in the middle. But yeah, it does open up a ton of questions here. And if they're super sold on keeping Cowan in, I prefer having, I think, Lorentz in the middle. The question is Steven Lorentz, is he going to be fine playing center a ton of games? That's the question. But again, Kampf was literally just hours ago wearing a regulars jersey. Craig Berube was talking about the Scott Laughton injury, saying it's a tough loss for him and us. He had a real good camp. It's tough for everybody. And on David Kampf, Craig Berube said he's a good NHL player, been around, played in the league in a long time, so he's reliable. hours later, he's gone. But I think that's the way things are going to shake out now with the fourth line.
Yeah, and I think that first of all, that quote is hilarious considering Craig Berube has a bigger role now with the player development, the player personnel, all of that stuff. He's working much more closely as a head coach than with his GM, Brad Treliving, than other head coaches do. So that quote is pretty crazy considering what happened a couple hours later. He's right though; he's an NHL player, but I think when push comes to shove and you're trying to get your lineup to look a certain way, you want to have your cap space look a certain way. At this point, you have to make some moves, and they decided that was the move they were going to make, and they're going to save the most on the cap, sending David Kampf through waivers. Yeah, and then when you're talking about who's going to play center for that line, you can't have it be Easton Cowan. He's not a center, first of all, and he can't play center all of a sudden at the NHL level, so it's not going to be him. It could possibly be Lorentz. Maybe it's somebody from the Marlies. This makes things very interesting. We don't know exactly what the plan is right now, but we're obviously going to keep you up to date here on the channel if anything else comes out today, because the Leafs love to make moves on a Friday afternoon. They absolutely love it. But we will see what happens. Yarncroke, I would imagine, would now factor back into the lineup. I don't think it's Nick Robertson on the fourth line. That's pretty interesting. So, and I still think they're trying to find a trade partner for Nick Robertson at this point in time, which could be the San Jose Sharks, which we touched on in a past video. So things are heating up here with some of the moves. I do wonder if they take a look at some of the Marlies, maybe a center from the Marlies, comes in, fills that spot for the time being. But ultimately, I think you could be onto something with Lorentz just possibly filling in there. But I don't love that. And I don't think Craig Berube is going to love that idea either.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we know Berube throughout camp has, I guess, praised Calle Jarnkrok for his play. He's played really well in preseason, so clearly they're going to be choosing him, even though 2 hours ago, it looked like David Kampf was the one who's going to fill in. A Robertson trade is possible here as well. And you can see this drop from Nick Barton like 25 minutes ago saying, Scott Laughton out nursing a lower body injury. David Kampf steps in as the fourth line center. More on what the Maple Leafs want to see from him after being on the outside looking in for most of the camp. This article was dropped, I think, like moments after David Kampf was waived, which is a little bit crazy. But it goes to show how shocking it was for even the most in-tune reporters here not realizing that this is going to happen. He'll probably clear waivers. But again, you look at the way that things work now with the salary cap and the amount he was going to have. Let's have a quick look. The projected cap space, $608,000. Of course, you look at the lineups and the roster, the way things are going to look. He was making 2.4. He also has another year left on his deal. Was not a great move by the front office there, but at the same time, they're cutting their losses early. Quickly before I wrap up, just a look at his stats last year: 13 points in 59 games. They of course signed him after that 27-point year, 26-point year. So it's going to be interesting, but at the end of the day, he's gone. He might return if he clears waivers. He's a pretty serviceable center, and with the CBA going up, I wouldn't be surprised if a team takes a flyer on him. So it's going to be, with the cap going up, take a flyer on him. So, and also let us know down below, out of all of these, lines here, obviously we're talking about David Kampf, being gone, but also we're talking about Lorentz factoring in the center. What would your fourth line be out of everyone that is available here? Throw in your lines down below. We'll have a look at every single one of them. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.